Hearing sound is not the same as understanding. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. I want to talk about one of the biggest misunderstandings people have about being deaf. There's just a high range of people who are deaf. We're all different. We all have different sounds that we might be missing and cannot hear. For me, it's not hearing the high pitch or the high sound, such as bell, birds, water running, wind blowing, and whatever other sound that's similar out there, I would know. So some deaf can hear those sounds, and some cannot hear low sounds, such as people's voices or dog barking, TV on, and etc. Some deaf people can actually hear nothing with or without the hearing aid. If I wasn't wearing one of my hearing aids, I would hear nothing. I only wear one hearing aid as my left ear is completely deaf. Just because I can hear you does not mean I understand what you said. I wear hearing aids, just one. They help me hear sounds. I may hear your voice. I may know that you're talking, but that does not mean I heard every word, and it definitely does not mean that I understand the whole conversation. For me personally, by the way, this is different for all of us. I may be lucky to catch around 30% being said in some situation. Think about that. Imagine sitting through a meeting, class, or conversation and getting pieces of it. You hear tomorrow, you hear meeting, you hear 10, building, brain. Now try to figure all of that out, what that person actually said. Was the meeting 10 to 10? Do I need to brain something? Did the building change? Is it tomorrow? Can you hear someone's voice and still miss most of the information? Yes. Hearing aids don't make me hearing. This is something that I wish more people would understand. Hearing aids are wonderful technology, by the way, but they don't give me normal hearing. They amplify sound. And sometimes that means they amplify everything. A person be talking behind me, a chair scraping across the floor, air conditioning, people laughing, the dog barking, music playing. Those are sounds that can compete with the voices I'm trying to understand. I'm trying to take the sound I hear, lip read, watch facial expression, use context, and put everything together in my head. And it takes a lot of work. Sometimes I figured it out, sometimes I don't. And sometimes I think I understand something only to find out later, oh, oops, I misunderstood the whole thing. And that's why I was saying, but you have hearing aids. Doesn't that solve the problem? Why I use an interpreter? People sometimes wonder why I need an interpreter, a sign language interpreter, if I can hear with hearing aids. This is why an interpreter helps. It helps with filling in the information that I'm missing. If I'm sitting through a long meeting, presentation, conference, medical appointment, or lecture, trying to understand everything through my hearing aid can be very exhausting. I don't want 30% of the information. I need access to 100% of the information. An interpreter gives me access to a language I understand. Closed caption can also be extremely important. This isn't about giving deaf people special treatment. This is about giving us access to the same information as everyone else is receiving. Imagine going to school this way. Now imagine being a child. Imagine trying to learn math, science, history, reading, and everything else while still catching every piece of the words your teachers are saying. That's a big part of my experience growing up. I went to school in the 1960s and the 70s, and technology was nothing like it is today. We didn't have closed caption technology. Children that have now today, we didn't have smartphones. We didn't have automatically created caption. We didn't have the accessibility tools available now. I spent a lot of time lost. I didn't always know what the teacher said. I didn't always know what the other kids were talking about in the classroom. Sometimes I had to watch everyone around me and try to figure out what was happening. And here's the problem. When a deaf child doesn't understand the lesson, people can mistakenly think the child isn't smart. But intelligence isn't the problem. Access is the problem. How can a child learn information that they've never received? Language comes first. That is why I believe strongly that a deaf and hard of hearing children need to have access to a language as early as possible. The child's brain are developing incredibly fast. They need communication, they need conversation, they need to ask questions, they need stories, they need jokes, they need to understand what mom and dad are saying, they need to communicate their feelings, they need to understand what their teachers are teaching. And they need language that is fully accessible to them. For many deaf children, that can include American Sign Language, a hearing aid, Cochlear implant can be a useful tool too. But technology should not be confused with language access. A child may wear hearing aids and still miss words. Children can have cochlear implant and still need caption. A child may speak clearly and still not understand everything that's being said to them. How well a deaf child speaks does not automatically tell you how well that child hears or understands spoken language. That distinction is extremely important. We have better technology today, and that's the good news. We have come a long way since I was a child. And we have hearing aids that are much more advanced, and cochlear implant too. We have closed caption, and we have speech-to-text technology, and we have video communication, we have remote interpreting, we have apps that can turn speech into text. We have access to information that I could only imagine have dreamed about when I was growing up. But having technology available doesn't help if we don't let the children use it. Child shouldn't have to prove that they're struggling before we give them access. Not the high one, by the way, because all the children I know go through that. If captions help them, give them closed caption. If the interpreter helped them, provide an interpreter. If sign language, give them complete access to communication, give them sign language. And if they use hearing aid or Cochlear implant, great. It doesn't have to be one or the other. We can give them, we need to give the children more tools and not fewer. We don't assume we understand. This applies to deaf adults too. If you're talking to someone who is deaf, hard of hearing, don't assume that they understand because they're not. I did this growing up. I always nod. Sometimes we nod because we're trying to follow along. Sometimes we're caught a part of it, what you said. Sometimes we're tired of asking, what? Sometimes we don't want to stop the group conversation for the fifth time. And sometimes we don't realize we misunderstood you until later. But it's so easy just to nod our head in agreement, just to move on. Communication is a two-way street, by the way. If you ask to repeat again, please repeat it. If I ask you to write it down, write it down. If I need closed caption, don't make me feel bad for wanting to use it. If I need an interpreter, don't tell me, but you can hear me. Yeah, I may hear you, but that doesn't mean that I understand everything. Those are two different things. What I want parents to know, if you are a parent to a deaf or a hard of hearing child, please remember this. Your child's ability to hear some sound doesn't necessarily mean that they completely have access to language. Watch what your child understands, not just what they can hear. Give them every possible way to communicate. Let them see the language. Let them hear what they can. Give them closed caption. Give them an interpreter when they need them. Give them access to sign language. Most importantly, give them the ability to fully participate in a conversation that's happening around them. Because no child should spend their childhood sitting in a classroom wondering what everyone else is talking about. I know what that feels like. I lived it. And with technology, knowledge, and resources that we have today, we can do so much better for the next generation. And being deaf doesn't mean I live in complete silence. I do hear some things. And I do wear one hearing aid. I communicate with hearing people every day. But please don't confuse hearing sounds with understanding language. Those two are not the same thing. My hearing aids are a tool. Caption is a tool. Interpreter is a tool. Now, sign language is the language. And when deaf and hard of hearing people have access to the communication tool and language that works for them, we have the opportunity to learn to participate, work, lead, and succeed. So the next time you meet someone wearing a hearing aid or cochlear implant, don't just assume. They can hear, they're fine. Instead of asking, what do you need? What do you need to have full access to the conversation? That one question can make a world of difference. Why should a deaf person have to do all the work? This is the big one. I think especially for children today, there's another part of the conversation that we have not talked enough about. Many deaf and hard of hearing children are born into hearing family, and too often the deaf child is expected to do most of the work to communicate. Think about that for a minute. Deaf child is expected to wear the hearing aid. Deaf child is expected to get a cochlear implant. That's fine. Deaf child is expected to learn to speak. A deaf child is expected to lip read. Deaf child is expected to figure out what everyone is saying at the dinner table. But how many parents, brothers, sisters, grandparents, aunt and uncle make the same effort to learn American Sign Language? Yeah, this is a big one. Some estimate often shared in the deaf community suggest only around 15 to 20% of hearing family members will learn enough sign language to communicate effectively. Through the exact percentage varies depending on the research and how sign language ability is measured. Whatever the exact number, we know is still a major communication gap for many families, and I want people to think about that, what that feels like for a deaf child. Imagine sitting at the dinner table with your own family. Everyone is laughing. Everyone told the funny jokes. Your brother answers. Your mom says something. Everyone laughed again, and you're sitting there thinking, what did they say? Someone might tell you, I'll tell you later. But later never comes. That child missed another family conversation, and then another, and another. And over the years, that's a lot of information. Relationship, jokes, stories, and family memories that a deaf child can miss. Communication should not be a responsibility of the deaf person alone. Communication takes two people. If we expect a deaf child to work every day to communicate with the hearing world, I think hearing family can make that effort to meet the child halfway. Learn some ASL, learn together, and don't worry about being perfect. Start with everyday words. Learn how to say, how's your day? Learn to say, I love you. Learn to joke with your child. Learn enough that your child doesn't have to struggle just to be part of their own family. Hearing aids, cochlear implant can be a wonderful tool, but technology should never become an excuse for the families to stop working toward accessibility and communication. The goal shouldn't be how can we make the deaf child communicate like us. The question should be, what can we do to communicate with our deaf child? That is inclusion. That is accessibility. And most important, that is family. So take care.